This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inside Out Smile. I'm your host, Dr. Amber Q, and it's 2026, and as you can probably tell from the title, that I have something to say about this new year. Now, as you know, I'm not a fan of waiting till the new year to kind of, to implement change or to make change or to determine that there's going to be a change in one's life. And what I wanted to say was that I think that generally New Year is always, there's a build up to it, like sort of like Christmas, where, hey, on New Year's, there's going to be a big change and, it's going to be sort of like fireworks. It's going to be great. We're going to have a new mindset. And as you'll know, if you have been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that I believe that we can change at any time. But I feel that although New Year's for some holds this, hey, let's party, let's hear the fireworks, for many people, it's a heavy time. It's a quiet time. And this New Year's Day, actually New Year's Eve, was it New Year's Eve that or maybe it was the day before, my neighbour actually messaged me to tell me that he hadn't been able to go away for Christmas. He was going away after Christmas for the holidays and with his family. And it turned out that his dad became unwell and he sadly passed away on New Year's Day. And I was so sorry for his loss. And I also recalled that a couple of years ago, I was chatting with that neighbour and another neighbour drove up and she basically suddenly burst into tears and said that her dad had passed away unexpectedly on Boxing Day. And oh my gosh, it just makes you realise how quickly anything can turn into perspective. And of course, while half the world is celebrating, as it does in January, big goals, big money plans, big declarations, the other half, of course, is living in abject poverty, hunger, conflict, and just occupation. And, I don't know. And I think the thing is that when we are grief-stricken, that has a way of just cutting through the noise. And I think that really makes us think, what are we building if we're not going to take any of it with us? And I think that's where I feel really, really blessed as a Muslim, because of course there are things you can take with you, and those things are good deeds and I would say your character as well, but ultimately I guess that translates into good deeds, because when you are kind to others and in service to humanity, essentially that's a good deed. So you can take things with you. And so the thing is that I do feel that there's a way to start a year or a new year. And that way, and obviously we're going by the Gregorian calendar, but there's a way to start the new year that is gentle, honest, and, and actually doable. And it's not because you're aiming low, it's because you're aiming true. I think with the hype around New Year, there's a lot of pressure to prove, oh my gosh, this year is going to be different. And oh my gosh, how do people measure that difference anyway? There are various milestones and achievements. And although, of course, it's good to learn and to progress, I think the assumption is that, I don't know, that more money or more milestones actually equate to more meaning. And I'm not saying that goals don't matter. Goals do matter and they can be absolutely amazing. But I think that your goals should always serve your life. And that's both here in this life and in the hereafter. And your life shouldn't be sacrificed for your goals. You shouldn't be thinking, oh my God, I've got to achieve this, and then just miss out on so many things. And so, I don't know, when I say a soft kind of reset, I guess what I mean is choosing, a calmer pace. And we know that smaller steps and essentially sort of priorities that are aligned with your values are actually kind of the best way to live. And so it's not about being sort of unmotivated, right? It's just about, I think, being awake and truly alive, because when life reminds you what matters, with, for example, a bereavement, you don't want to spend the year just kind of, sprinting towards things that won't actually fulfill you. And so I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because my neighbour is a great person, very decent person. And I don't know that much about his life to actually comment on it. But a lot of people do, I just wonder how this, and again, I'm very sorry for his loss, but I wonder how this is going to change his perspective. And so I think, rather than thinking how sort of impressive is this year going to look, and this is not connected with him, I'm not saying that he's like this, he is lovely, but I think that it's about, I think we should all be thinking, and this is how I think, how do I want to feel every day? And what do I want to have more of in my week? And what sort of person do I want to be while I'm here on earth? Because you don't have to be elderly to pass away. This can happen at any point in your life. And I think that one thing I would like to say is that if you are listening and you're carrying grief or worry or exhaustion, then this matters even more, because, a soft reset isn't sort of shiny and positive. It gives you permission, I think, to be human and to still move forward. And I think that's ultimately what life is about, right? Just moving forward in tiny ways. And Islamically, everything is judged by intention. And I love that so much. But for example, so people have asked me, oh, have you set your goals? Have you set your goals? And I'm kind of like, no, not really. There's no complete reinvention. I haven't set 10 goals. I've only set a couple, literally. And it's not even really a goal. It's just a priority and kind of a direction. And I mean, if you want to know what my goals are, well, write in and I'll be happy to share them with you. But the point is that I think, it's really interesting because I love the pillars of lifestyle medicine, but equally, I think there can be other pillars as well, like energy, peace of mind, peace of heart, connection that I'm always speaking about, and, just stability really in terms of the basic things that you need. And then finally growth, because we all need to grow. If we're not growing, then we're basically just decaying. And my thought process is, even if you improve just one thing this year, something that made your days lighter, well, that's great. That's great. And I think it's about thinking about that sort of thing, because we know about micro joys, we know about microaggressions. So really it's, sort of improving your micro joys and trying to decrease your microaggressions. And I think the thing is that if you do make a list of a couple of priorities, just like, I don't know, 2 or maybe 3, I think, then if you just kind of break that down into 5-minute kind of habits, that's great, right? So there's 1 to 3 priorities, give them a minimum habit. Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat. I did just have a buttered scone. It was lovely. Actually had a conversation with one of my friends about sultanas and raisins, but I'm digressing. So basically, if you've got 1 to 3 priorities, you want to then just create 5-minute habits as a minimum. And that's the thing. That's all you need to do, because consistency isn't built on, your best days. Why does the research show that people, the gyms are really busy in January, but by February they're like half empty again? And that's because it's like friendship, right? It's like anyone can be there in the good times. Consistency, it's not about just the best days, right? It's about days when you don't feel like it, basically, and you do something anyway. And that's why if it's 5-minute habit, then it's great, right? So for example, if you want an energy boost, make sure you fill one of those 5-minute slots with some walking or stretching or some form of exercise, etc. And, if your priority is connection, and I hope it would be because you listen to this podcast, then, just a 5 minutes to send a little voice note to someone that you miss, or send a text, or 5 minutes of planning to meet someone. One of my friends, actually, it's so interesting. She invited me out on New Year's Eve, and I said to her that, I might have mentioned this previously, I'm not sure, but I basically said to her that I was feeling reflective because, I was trying to support my neighbour. And she said she totally understood because her grandfather several years ago had passed away on New Year's Eve. And so there's so many stories like this. And so I think the thing is that, and I'm not saying that we should hold on to grief, but I think the thing is that, that life is just unpredictable. So I think that so many people are holding grief and emotion and anxiety. So I feel that, all these motivational quotes that are around, all this kind of toxic positivity in a way, the whole point is not to win the day. The point is you just want to keep a promise to yourself. And if you make it a 5-minute thing, then it's just going to be easier. And then you can build upon that once that's stabilized, right? If you are the person where you think, hey, I can build upon that, then that's wonderful, right? But I think the thing is that, as I said, the priority is moving forward. And I think that when we feel that we're moving forward, we have hope, and that just propels us forward. And obviously there is this whole neuroscience behind it as well, that, you get that little dopamine rush when you do the 5-minute thing, and then it encourages you to do it again. So it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think that's the great thing about 5-minute habits. And you don't even need to do them in the new year. As I said before, and as I've said on numerous episodes, every minute that you are breathing is a chance for you to change. So I know, hey, we're already in the first week of January, or rather the first week has gone, right? So it's January the 6th. Depending on where you are, it might be the 5th of Jan, or it might be the 7th of Jan, and it might even be a different day depending on when you listen to this podcast. But the point is, if you are breathing, and I suspect that if you're listening to this podcast episode, you are breathing. So congratulations. You have an opportunity to change. So just start with a 5-minute habit. And honestly, I say this all the time, that things that I don't like to do, but I have to do, I just chunk them down. I just chunk them down. I do them a bit at a time, and it just makes it, I don't know, more pleasant, actually. It does actually make it more pleasant. And yeah, I'm going to do something today that I haven't done as yet, and there's a deadline to it, so I need to do it. So I'm chunking it down, and it just makes it a bit more fun, actually. And so what I want to say is that don't worry if you haven't made big goals, or don't worry if you made big goals and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? If you do have several big goals or whatever, I mean, I know most people say, oh yes, chunk it down anyway. And there are probably people out there that advocate chunking down because it's the big thing, right? The whole tiny habit movement. But I think the thing is that don't pick so many things. Just pick a couple of main priorities. And to be honest, life is so unpredictable, as we've seen. I think the thing is that even if you've got a couple of priorities and then those things change, maybe a loved one becomes ill, or you become ill, or just something happens and you feel derailed, just pick up whenever you can and then just continue. Or if you can't do 5 minutes, do 2 minutes, during, I don't know, a tough time. But don't ever give up on yourself. And I think that's the message that I want to get out today, is that I feel that there's this enforced positivity about the new year. And I'm sorry, the world is still suffering. There's so many people still suffering. I don't see how we can feel joyous, quite frankly, with the state that the world is in. And I think it's just about moving forward, because at the end of the day, and, I don't mean to sound, I don't know who's listening in terms of your faith or what your beliefs are, but we all know that we're moving towards the end of our own life, whenever that's going to be. We don't know when it is, but we do know that with each breath, we are moving forward to that. So what I want to say to you is reach out to that person. This whole thing sometimes about pride, and people have arguments, or I don't know, they just stop speaking with each other, and there's normally some sort of reason that's silly, and then it becomes bigger in your head. Don't worry about that. Just reach out to somebody, because when they're gone, it's very limited, the communication that you have. And yes, there is communication that you can have, but again, that's an Islamic perspective. But obviously it's not sort of a two-way communication. You can do good deeds for a loved one, like a parent and things. But so what I want to say is just reach out and connect, because really the research shows that that is the biggest thing. Obviously we need food and water to survive and shelter, but essentially connection is the biggest thing that holds us together. Family, friendships, community, that is it. So I think what I would say is, great, have your priorities, 1 to 3, and and this is just my opinion, of course, do whatever you would like, but this is my opinion, which I'm sharing on my podcast. But what I'd say to you is, and set those habits, but what I'd say to you is just reach out to somebody that you haven't spoken to. Even better if it's a relative, but also a friend. Just reach out and say, hi, how are you? That's it. Just say, hi, I was thinking of you. Just send that and see what happens. And until the next episode, let's all create connection and not just change lives, but save lives.